I was married for almost 15 years. I took roles really serious. A mom, and I was a wife, and I was going to do all those great. And I did, until I didn't. I felt I lost who I was. I had to figure out who I was again. I was looking at my reflection, and I'm like, wow, physically, I can see that strength. But mentally, internally, I was fighting. I think in that moment, I actually got brave for the first time. You know, I decided that day that I was going to leave. I had to decide if I was worth it. I had my husband and I had 3 kids. Decided if I was worth causing pain to 4 other people. I mean, I could stick it out for everybody else. Like, you gotta dig. Because if you can dig out a positive, then it becomes a lesson. But I looked over at my kid, and the look on his face for me, in my perspective, was, oh, Mom, she's lost so much weight. She's not doing good. That was what I was thinking. He said to me, I hope you love the woman you were, as we did. And I was like, yeah, that hit hard. And, you know, as much as we look at ourselves and we judge ourselves, I think it's so important to go back to those stages of ourselves and just honor that person. You do the best you know how until you know better. I do believe your greatest love of your life is supposed to be yourself. And to get to that point is a journey.
All right, welcome back, Wellness Ninjas, to another episode of the Wellness Dojo podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Craik, and excited today to have Jodi Barrett here. Welcome to the show, Jodi.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited for this conversation. You have a really unique and interesting journey that we were talking about before. So before we get into all of that, can you tell people just a little bit about who you are, if they don't know?
Absolutely. So I'm uniquely going to start this right off the bat. My name is Jodi. I am kind of quirky. I'm very resilient, determined, funny, and I like to kick it off like that because I no longer like to describe myself as a role.
I love it.
Right? So I used to get asked that, and I'd be like, well, I'm a mom, I'm an entrepreneur.
Yeah, all the identities.
All identities. And that seemingly got me into a lot of turmoil. So I am a CEO of KB Stronger, which was kettlebell kickboxing at one time, rebranded, and author of I Don't Do Vanilla. So those are some of my accolades with that and my roles.
I love that. I love that you started off that way because it's so easy for us to just get stuck into like, this is what I do. This is like, So that was great. I love that.
Yeah. And I love that spending time with people. I really want them to dig deep on, because you ask people who they are or to describe themselves, and it's always their roles. Yeah. And I'm like, let's get beyond that and get into who you are. Yeah.
So let's dig in then. So you mentioned you've gotten yourself into some turmoil by doing that, by going into the identities and stuff. What do you mean by that?
I was married for almost 15 years, and I took roles really serious because I was a mom and I was a wife, and I was going to do all those great. And I did, until I didn't. And until I pretty much I felt I lost who I was. And I had to figure out who I was again. Just kind of start, not from scratch, but at times it felt like scratch. And just going through that whole process, recognizing that we focus so much on our identity as our roles. And I think if we can, navigate life through who we are as a person, I think it'll better serve us.
Yeah, that's powerful. And that resonates with me as well, because I've caught myself doing the same thing where you're like, I want to be a good husband, a good father, and like all these things that you identify yourself as being.
Yes.
But then what happens when those things are stripped away? Or what happens when you don't feel called to be those things anymore? Right? Then, it's really, really easy then to find yourself completely lost.
Right?
Yeah.
I love when you said it twice. You said the word being and be. because when I went through that, I'll call it my turmoil stage, where I actually one day I'm like, I just need to be. Like, quit thinking about what I need to do, and I need to be me. And I didn't really know what that even looked like. So the process for me was like, I wanted to figure out stuff figuring out stuff I didn't like also, like that helped me find out who I was. So I wanted to be who I was today, see what I liked today, see what I didn't like today. And I prayed daily that would help me find, to the space that I am now. I didn't know if that was going to be the process, but I felt like it was such an uphill battle that I was just climbing and trying to figure it out all at once. And I think sometimes when you try to figure it out so much, you can't. So you just have to be. And when you said that, I was like, yeah, that's it, be, right?
Yeah, and that's a hard thing to accept almost.
Yeah.
I remember having a mentor once tell me, we were talking about like finding yourself, like like figuring out who you are, really. And I said to him, I was like, you seem to have figured it out. Like, you know who you are. So I'm like, how did you do it? Yeah. And he's like, there's no like one way to do it. And the more you try to dig and the more you try to look for it, the harder it is to see it. It's like, but when you realize it, you'll know. And you might not like all of it.
Right.
But it's like you said, I think it comes down to this, like, just listening more and trying to do, and it's less output, more input.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and going within, right? And I think being quiet, because we're so busy, right? From the minute we get up and we get scrolling on our phones, we're going, because we have such a huge platform where we can connect now.
Yeah.
Right. And it's that whole idea of, we're connecting, but we're also disconnecting in that process. Right. And for me, I remember, like, when I went through my separation, my divorce, I was like so busy because it kept me alive and thinking that if I could navigate, if I didn't slow down, I wouldn't have to sit in it. And I had an uncle that said to me once, he's like, you need to practice sitting quietly. And I was like, oh my God, that's terrifying for me. Like, it scared me. I was like, because then you have to be alone with your inner thoughts and actually sit with it. But it was practice. And same thing, it's like everybody has a different way of going about it. Though I think if I was to give some guidance on how to start, it would be incorporating some kind of quiet. For me, what really helped me, and that's how I got to kettlebell, was the rhythm of the bell. Because when everyone told me to sit quietly, I couldn't, because I was trying to navigate everything, right? I was a stay-at-home mom for 11 years, and then all of a sudden I'm looking to find what I'm going to do for work. I only have my kids half time. And you're telling me to sit quietly in a room when I am used to being like the multitasking queen. Yeah. It was terrifying me. So the bell helped me, and I helped, like, that movement and that meditation of that allowed me to transition into, I can sit and read a book again, or I can sit and just be quiet.
Yeah.
It's that listening piece, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so powerful. So you mentioned you were a stay-at-home mom for how many years?
11 years.
11 years. And so I was curious, like, what life kind of looked like for you during that time. Were you still, like, very, like, fitness-driven and very active and stuff?
Yeah, I was. I would get up. I look at some things a little bit with interest now, things that probably were key signs to where I was going with everything. I would get up in the morning and go swimming at probably 5:30. So I'd get my lane swim done before the kids got up and got them ready to go to school. So, but I've always had a fitness component in my life. So for me, I think that helped, because I think fitness helps, movement helps everybody on a daily basis. Yeah. I went too far, and when my kids were all in school, I would spend probably 2 hours Monday, Wednesday, Friday in a gym. And then I would run every other day, 5 to 10 kilometers, until one day I would talk about the story about sitting in the gym, staring at my reflection. And that day I didn't lift anything. I actually looked at myself and I thought I had such a connect and disconnect at the same time, because I was looking at my reflection and I'm like, wow, she's strong. Like, physically, I can see that strength, But mentally, internally, I was fighting. And I was like, I cannot lift a thing. And it was terrifying because I'd used training to get me to that point in life with I was okay with all my decisions. I was okay with my marriage. But I used to write that I felt broken. And I think in that moment, I actually got brave for the first time. And I thought, I need a change. Like, this is not going well for me. And that moment when I couldn't lift was like, geez, this has gotten me this far. And I actually, you know, the thought of lifting up my gym bag felt heavy. And yeah, that was that point where I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it's powerful because I think so many people can relate to trying to just like work through it, like, and not like in the typical sense of like that we would talk about in wellness. But I've been there before as well, where you're ignoring the thing that's really bothering you, and you're almost using it. Like I would use it at the gym. I'm oh, fuck, I'll just push through this and I can lift more now. Right? Like I'm using this emotion now in a healthy way.
Yes.
But it finds its way back to the surface, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of it, right? Is if you can get there and just recognizing that. And I'm like, I always go through with my clients, like the 3 A's. You have an awareness that you have to have. You have to acknowledge the awareness and then take an action. And we are all, and I always say that I am very good at being avoiding. You know, like I'm aware there's usually something right here that's always like, yeah, Jodi. And then I'm like, no, I'm going to just go do something else. So I think that's where, you know, that day I was always aware deep down, if I slowed down, that something was bothering me. But I avoided it through I'm going to lift, I'm going to run. And then I'm grateful for that day. Grateful the day that I felt broken, right? And felt like I can't, because it made me, you know, step up. Yeah.
What do you think kind of got you to that point? Like, because I know like it's really easy for us listening to a story like that to be like, oh, I wish I could just like get to that realization. But I think there's always like everything comes in with time, right? It comes with work and like with, I say it all the time, people who have like aha moments, like it doesn't just happen. It happens through like maybe years or months or weeks of journaling and like self-reflection and these types of things. I'm curious, what do you think led to you finally having this like realization, seeing yourself differently?
I think for me, it was training. Training guides me daily. It always been there. And I think that that moment came where it was like, I think it built me for that moment. Everything in my life kind of like set up to that. And I kind of had to look at myself and go, I'm so not happy. Yeah. And, you know, I decided that day that I was going to, you know, leave. And it was hard because that was the day, excuse me, I had to decide if I was worth it. Because I thought, 4 people. I had 4 people, like I had my husband and I had 3 kids. And I had to decide if I was worth causing pain to 4 other people. I stood on a bridge that day and not doing anything crazy, but I remember standing on this little bridge in Regina and I was crying thinking, God, am I really worth it? Like, I mean, I could stick it out for everybody else till the end. But then I thought, geez, you get one shot, as far as we know, at this life. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to make it an incredible one. And I know that I had to do that, which was super, super hard. But at the end of the day, it was finding that worth deep inside, that everybody's worth that. And my hope was that, you know, I remember hugging my ex in our main floor in our house. And I remember him hugging me. And I used to think, in that moment, I was like, man, I know he loves me. But I equally know he deserves someone hugging him back that loves him just the same. Right? And then with my kids, I'm like, I feel like I can show them, you know, so much more in a different avenue. It might be super hard, and it was. And I always say, if someone would have given me a playbook of what that looked like, I probably wouldn't have left. Because there was some ugly, ugly stuff, hard stuff. Yeah. But sitting here, I feel so good at where I'm at. And you have to work at everything, like I had years of time with my relationship with my kids that I thought, I screwed this up so bad that there isn't nothing coming back to me on it. And there was nights I sat with that. And I can happily say, sitting here, that might have made us stronger, and in a healthy way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's this quote that I've heard recently, or it talks about the kind of the tragic irony of life.
Mm-hmm.
Life is lived forwards, but you can't make sense of it until you look back.
Yeah.
Like, you only connect the dots backwards,
Mm-hmm.
but it has to be lived forwards first. And it's something that resonates with me as well, because I know that it's a very similar experience, right? You have all this pressure of like, you want to be, we have these beliefs and these, like, I think, visions of like what life is supposed to look like for us. You're supposed to get married. You're supposed to keep the family together. You're supposed to sacrifice yourself for your family, and just all these deep rooted beliefs.
Yeah.
But there are new beliefs coming up that of the power in doing what's right for you. And I think that when you look backwards through and connect those dots, you see like, oh, this had to happen in order for me to learn this lesson.
Yes.
And maybe this had to happen for our family in order to show, the kids this, or to teach even your like spouse, significant other, something as well. Mm-hmm. And but most importantly, yourself, right?
Yeah. No, I think that's a huge thing. And I always say, when people go through like a tragic event, I'm like, if practice finding the positive. And people are like, there's no positive in that. And I'm like, you gotta dig. Mm-hmm. Because if you can dig out a positive, then it becomes a lesson that you can use and move forward with.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's always an opportunity for the lesson.
Yes.
And I always say opportunity
because is a great word.
We have the choice of whether this is a tragedy or whether this is, a step forwards. And I really do think that we get to choose that.
Yes, you do. You get to choose how you handle it, right?
Yeah.
Every day.
So talk to me about the book. So at what point did you decide, I need to write about this, the whole experience? Because the name of the book is I Don't Do Vanilla. Yes. So can you talk first about like, where did the name come from? Oh,
the name. Because I'd been marketing enough that I knew that I was in the bookstore one day and I thought, I would pick up a book that said that.
Yeah.
I would, just because I'd want to see what the heck it was about.
Yeah,
right?
I love it.
Yeah, and then I did have people, when I released the name of it, they were like, Jodi, do you know what that means? It can mean this. And I was like, I know, but I said I kind of put in the context of, seemingly I walk through this world, this life of mine, not doing things the average way.
Yeah.
So
that's how I took it.
Yeah. So that's, I ran with it. And it's funny, the cover of the book was actually taken, the picture was taken 2 years before.
Okay. Yeah. I have it here. Yeah.
Yeah. My publisher, she's like, I see this vision. And I said, no. No, I said, no, you don't. Because I said, a really good friend of mine who does a lot of marketing, she took that for me. One day, and I was like, I know exactly, I see it, I know where it's at, I know the color.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, she said it was super cool. She goes, your book cover was born before your book even existed in your mind.
Yeah.
Because when I took it, wasn't thinking about that at all. I was thinking about, yes, as a fitness person, I eat ice cream,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Eat ice cream, enjoy it. And then I would journal a lot, and people kept saying to me, you should write a book. And then just one day I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Well, I love it, because I think we kind of talked about this, but I think our struggles become strengths for other people.
Yes.
Right? And again, that's a choice, but I look at my life that way, as all the difficult things that I've been through, all the challenges that I've been through, I always approach it in a sense of like, this is going to help somebody. This is going to be somebody's blueprint one day, and how cool that you were able to kind of create a blueprint for other people who have been through similar things.
Yeah, when I wrote it, I am so like committed to when I decide to do something. I pick 16 Sundays. I think I had shared that with you. At Starbucks, I would leave my apartment and I would go right for an hour and a half on Sundays. So on my birthday, it was done. And then coming back to the piece about sharing is when I was done it, I thought, I don't need to publish this. It's good. I got to heal through the journey, write it out. And then that little voice again that's on your shoulder saying you did this to share, because there's power in sharing. And, you know, I always say like that my story is your story is uniquely to your own. But when you share your story, it's incredible how many other people can go, I relate.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's really powerful too. Like I'll sometimes like even having like I'll have conversations on the podcast, but then oftentimes we'll chat off camera afterwards.
Yeah.
And sometimes we get into like some personal conversations, and just not even through just podcast guests, but anybody in my life, there's almost like a it's almost like some like solace to like when you hear somebody else who's been through something that's a little bit messed up. Yes. Because it's like, we're like together, like we can relate about this. It's, you know, it's my life isn't so screwed up. This is actually just life.
Yeah. And it's that feeling of you don't feel alone in something.
Yeah.
Because we carry this heavy backpack thinking that, man, I messed up so bad. This is me. This is my life. I've sucked at this. And then you hear someone else say that they did the same. And I think about when having this discussion with you on that, there is one part in there I wrote it after a lunch with a lady, and I pulled over the side of the road and I wrote it in my phone because I wasn't going to put it in because it was so raw to me. When we were sitting having lunch, she said to me she was divorced also, and her child moved in with the dad. And we got talking, and because my kids eventually, they, you know, in 2019, they moved out and they moved in with their dad. And I felt like such a loser. I was like, because moms sometimes are this nurturing in my mind. I'm like, you're always with your mom because they brought you into this world. They carried you for 9 months. If they're not, there's something so wrong with you as a human being. And I was so raw, I wasn't even going to put that in the book because I still carried that feeling so heavy. And that day when we had that discussion, I drove away and I pulled over and I realized the power of the book and sharing the story because she gave me permission that day to put that down. And it was such a beautiful moment because it was like I got to share it through the book. But more beautiful was I got to have that moment of I'm not such a screw up. Like it's just the process, the journey of how things laid out. And it's so cool. I want to talk about the process of like the healing process of writing the book as well. Because you mentioned there was a time where you're like, I don't need to share this because it served its purpose for me. Yes. So can we talk about what is so healing about writing? Because I agree with you. Yeah. Like I get the same kind of healing through writing about my experiences, but I'm curious what that process was like for you. Yeah, it was good. The lady who helped guide me through writing it, she was fantastic because she said, I told her I was going to go to Starbucks and write. And she's like, okay, that's great. You go to your place. But she said, don't be alarmed if when you're writing, it triggers something in you and you end up in tears. She goes, so now you're going to be at Starbucks in this moment, right? And I was like, oh, I feel like I'll be okay, right? But it would hit you, and whether you had that moment right there in Starbucks or you sat in the car after, it just allows you, there's something very therapeutic of writing stuff down. And I don't mean even texting or typing. Like when I write stuff and it means something to me, I want to write it because there's a connection there with your mind and your body and your soul that allows you to tap in. And it's kind of like that thing, you know, they used to say, write down something you want to get rid of, and then you throw it away, right? You burn it or you do something to it. It's just going through the process and looking at it. You know, before I closed my studio in Regina, the irony was, as I was in the process in my brain, I was also getting ready to launch this book. So I'd have to edit it. And I was like, oh man, I don't really have time to go through this right now because I have got other things on my plate that are demanding my time. But the irony of it was when I would read it and I would see where I came from and what I've accomplished, and I was also in something else hard, I used that to go, okay, you've done hard before. Just be in it. Right? Just quit clawing. Trying to just be in it and know that you'll wake up tomorrow. It'll be a new day. Set your new intentions for the day. Move on. So I think, if you get into the process of writing, you'll find that it's very therapeutic. And that's why when I was done it, I was like, do I need to? Yeah. Because you question if it was it for, like, my purpose was to share it, but I probably didn't even know how much I needed it. And then when I had that, I was like, okay, I'm good. Let's move on. And I think part of it was maybe a little bit of being scared also of sharing that, right? So a mix of everything.
I could see that as well. And because have your kids read the book?
No, my oldest did. He read it. He started it about a year ago, and then I said, did you finish it? And he's like, no. He goes, I realized I wasn't really a main character, so I tapped out. He did finish it. He sent me a message saying, Mom, I finished it. And I was like, oh, what did you think? And then they're so good. My kids are so good. Sometimes I'm like, I think I did good. Because he's like, let's do a phone call and we'll talk about it versus text.
Shame. That's so nice.
It was good. It was good because there was a couple things in there that, and this is the thing, when you read it, I could give it to 10 people in a room and they're all going to get a different perspective. And they're going to think something differently, even that it's not the same, right? There was a story in there about me weighing myself. We were going ziplining and I knew I'd lost so much weight because I was super stressed, wasn't eating. And I remember looking at the scale going, I needed to be 100 pounds so I didn't have to have someone zipline with me. So I was like, I was 103. I was like, whew, made it. But I looked over at my kid and the look on his face for me in my perspective was, oh, Mom, she's lost so much weight. Like, she's not doing good. That was what I was thinking. He reads that story and he goes, all I was thinking, Mom, was, gee, I hope I weigh 100 pounds so I don't have to go with somebody. But I just thought it was funny because that's why I say get out of your head. Not most often we walk through this life thinking that somebody's thinking something. We're nowhere near even in, right?
I was just having a conversation with somebody just the other day, and we were talking kind of about that, where we create stories about what other people, whether you're walking through the mall or whether it's somebody who's actually like a close friend of yours, we create these stories of kind of how we see ourselves in our worst, that everybody is seeing it in that way. But there's this beautiful idea that, if you could see you through my eyes, like how refreshing that would look. Right.
Yes. And it's funny because when he read that book, he said to me, because his perspective was that I was really super hard on myself as their mom, like not being a good mom. And he said to me, and I'm going to try to get through this. He said to me, I hope you love the woman you were as we did. And I was like, yeah, that hit hard. And so even the last probably year of my life, I went back to a couple places. New York was one of them when I first started my kettlebell journey, and just embracing the person who I was 8 years ago when I started. Right. So I will thank him for that, because he led me into that position of, okay, as much as we look at ourselves and we judge ourselves, I think it's so important to go back to those stages of ourselves and just honor that person, because you do the best you know how, right? Until you know better.
Yeah.
And I just think there's so much beauty in going, I did good. I did my best. And just, walk yourself through that.
Yeah. What a proud mom moment, hey?
Right?
To hear him say that,
yeah.
like, that's such a powerful thing to
Yeah.
say too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know our kids surprise us, don't they? Sometimes with some of the things that they say.
Yeah.
I've had my kids as well. They'll, in the most random moments even, show like such compassion and empathy for me about like a version of me, even sometimes that, yeah, you're just looking at now and you're just like not proud of or something. And yeah, they see you for who you really are, I think. Right?
Yeah. I think love's a good thing. Such a great thing, right?
Yeah.
Because you get so hard on yourself sometimes, and I'm like you said, you think about how people look at you. And there's an exercise I do with my clients of, looking in the mirror and actually saying, I love you to yourself, and how hard that is sometimes. But yet your best friend sits beside you, and you could easily tell them how much you love them, and you could list the qualities of all the wonderful things. So I think, when you're working on that inner self, that quiet time is just building those moments with you and yourself. I do believe your greatest love of your life is supposed to be yourself. And to get to that point is a journey.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And even I've done some interesting exercises, even it sounds a little bit weird, but when you think about like the parts of a relationship that is enjoyable, like sometimes it's like having somebody like rub your arm, or like give you a hug, or like rub your shoulders, or even like run their like hands through your hair and stuff like that. And it's interesting because you can do that to yourself as well, but we don't. It seems weird.
Yes.
Right? And I remember hearing that in a podcast that I was watching where they talked about like, when's the last time you just like kind of caressed yourself, or like gave yourself a hug, or rubbed your own, arm and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I tried it, and I was like, it does feel really good to love yourself in that way. Yeah. Right? It's not just about talking positive to yourself and all those things. Those things are very powerful, very important. Yeah. But there's a lot of aspects to loving yourself that I think get overlooked as well. Right.
That we're always thinking that love is an external, that we have to get from someone else.
Yeah.
Right. And I think if you can work on that love that you create for yourself internally, then I think that's when I always think that you're probably at your peak point to love someone else.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a journey to get there, of course, but I always tell my kids, because I was worried that when I got divorced that they would think that I thought love was terrible and that having a partner was terrible. And I always used to say, I just want love, big love all of that, right? But I said, really work on loving who you are and discovering who you are, so that when you're ready to take on, being part of someone else's world, you're not trying to fill that part. So that when and if it doesn't work, that you're still okay. Because I think sometimes, because I don't think I knew, like thinking back, I was 23 when I got married. I didn't know. It'd be fun to have a conversation with myself at that time. If you could go back and say,
that'd be a good podcast, right?
Right? What is that? Well, how do you feel about loving yourself? And I'd be like, what are you talking about? But I think, just being able to do that, you react differently in relationships, right? And I used to probably, if you would have asked me to try to date 5 years ago, I wouldn't have. And I would have said, I'm not dating right now. Because I knew that I felt so volatile in my, I wanted my business to be successful. I wanted to focus there. And I wasn't confident enough inside that if I was in a relationship and it was a train wreck, that everything else would explode. So the cool thing is, it circled back to today. I'm like, I understand when people say, if you've loved yourself enough, you can have a relationship and be okay. It doesn't go. If it doesn't work, it doesn't wreck your world. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. That's so powerful. Yeah, that resonates deeply with me as well. Yeah. This idea that, I don't know. Okay, I have a question first. So when you were in that stage, not ready to date, did you still desire having somebody?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Because, yeah, that's an interesting thing, because I think that's what gets people caught a lot of times from doing that that important work. And I think there's for a lot of people, there are external like factors that are like, oh, I just wish you would find somebody so you could be happy. And like there's like that kind of messaging is out there.
Yes.
Where it's really hard but really important to step back and have that self-awareness of, I want to be okay enough that when I do, find that and commit myself to somebody, that if it doesn't work, it'll hurt, it'll be sad, but like it won't be what it was before for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I really felt like I wanted to, but I knew whatever I brought in wasn't going to be right. And I'm not going to say I didn't dabble in seeing what that was and discovering that it was like, because again, you're looking for an external, because you're not healed here. So you're looking at external ways too. I went through one summer where, because my brother's also divorced, and I remember saying to my mom, I'm like, I am not going through a summer of drinking and chaos. Like I'm going to skip that stage. Don't ever say that. Because I went through it where, every other weekend I'm like, okay, it's free weekend. I remember my dad walking in my place and he's like, there's a lot of wine bottles here, Jodi. And I was like, oh, Dad.
Yeah. Just living my best life right now.
But it was that external, always looking for something to make it feel better. Yeah. Right? Going out. Because sitting at home, having to sit in the real, wasn't ready for it. And again, it is... I guess my hope for people always is that they find their way there, that it's a journey, a process. It's not them just getting stuck in that, because you can get stuck. And I think that's where movement and exercise, I think, brought in the positive of the, I got to train tomorrow, not going out tonight, because you know what training and a night out till 2 looks like, right? You're not very effective. You maybe do it once or twice and then you're like, no more of that. Yeah.
Your body will let you know that it's not working anymore.
Right? So it's a process and a journey if you allow it to be that. Yeah. But you again have to choose. Yeah.
You have to give yourself permission first of all, but then make the choice that however this goes, it's a lesson. It's I'm moving forwards no matter what. I'm building. Yes. Yeah. I think it is really interesting that there's this dynamic when you're getting back into dating, I think, where it's like you want to be good enough to feel good enough yourself to go and to do that. Yeah. But at the same time, I think there's also a lot to take away from meeting new people. And I have this idea that relationships are like a mirror. Every relationship that you enter into, whether it's a friendship, a business partnership, a coworker, or a romantic relationship, it's a mirror to you. And you can learn more about yourself through the different people that you meet. One of the reasons I love podcasting, I get to meet all these different people, these amazing people. And every time I sit down with somebody, I learn a little bit more, because as you're talking, I'm relating and I'm thinking oh, that made me feel this way. And then afterwards I can be like, why did that make me feel this way? Yeah. I think relationships do that too. Oh, this person, it's just I didn't vibe with them. Why? And then you learn more about what am I looking for in a relationship, right?
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of the mirror. I think you can relate that to also seasons, right? Because they say that people come and go in different seasons. You mirror where you are, right? Your energy. Yeah. Right? You can have some really toxic relationships, and I say you have to own you were there. Yeah. Too, right? So again, you'd be mirroring where you are, and so I like that.
Yeah, everything takes two, right? Yes. Every situation takes two in a relationship. Absolutely. So yeah, there's a level of ownership that comes along with that too. Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned talking to your past self, that 23-year-old version of you that was getting married. If you could talk to that version of you today, what would you say?
Oh, this is always a good question. It always makes me think, because every year it changes what I think I'd want to say.
It's always evolving, right?
Right. I'd probably say something because she's not going to listen to anything I say anyways.
True. How true is that?
True story. I would just probably say hang on tight. It's going to be a good ride.
Interesting. I love that.
Yeah.
See, I love the idea of not like warning or trying to like create, like manipulate or change it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't be sitting here as me if I wasn't her then. Mm-hmm. Because you have to go through it all.
Yeah.
Right? Every twist and turn creates who you are.
Yeah. So reverse question. If what do you think 23-year-old you would say to you today?
I love that. I've never had anyone ask me that. She'd probably say chill out.
Why chill out?
Chill out because I often get like I replay things over and over how I'm gonna do it, and she'd probably like just chill, just.
Yeah. So
she is still there, that part of me
Yeah.
at those times. I bring her in every once in a while.
That's so interesting, right?
Right?
It's like one version is like, just hang on. Another version's like, hey, just let it ride, man.
Yeah, let's go with it.
I love that. Okay, so what does the future hold for you now? You've written this book. You got a successful business. Like, what are the future goals for you?
Speaking. I would like to do more speaking.
Okay.
Pull in the movement and mindset. I think it's key. You know, anybody who's actually really wanting to make a change, you can't do one without the other. Mm-hmm. Because a healthy body is a healthy machine, and a healthy mind also helps create a healthy machine. So they're intertwined. I don't think one can exist at its best potential without the other. So I would like to share that along with the book a little bit more. And there is another book that it's in the back of my mind that maybe will evolve in the next few years. I feel like there's going to be I got to get some more stories first to add to it. And my retreats. So I'm kicking off a retreat this year in October in Costa Rica. So I want to get back into doing those, because I also believe that to make a change, not sometimes, you have to get out of your space to have a look at what you look like. Mm-hmm. And when you're in the thick of it, every day, you need to remove yourself and have a moment to go, oh, I can see it a little bit clearer. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Yeah,
and I love that the connection with the body and the mind is something, even though we've talked a lot about like relationships in this episode, we've touched on a lot about that, and beautifully highlighted by that experience of you at the gym, and just like that disconnect between the body and mind, and how things just don't work unless they're working together. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And I think it's so, like, we always do, I'll do challenges with my clients, and I'll be like, they're hard, but they're not like something physically they can't do, but more often it's like a rep over rep. And a couple of things always happen when you do that. Number one, you never think that you can do what you never believe you're capable of something until you go through it. And then you can wow yourself, where you go, wow, I can't believe I did it. Number two, when you do training and you do something hard, it pulls down a wall. I've sat with many clients on a mat after a hard training session, and they just go tears. Yeah. And they're able to share something that's been bothering them, because you hold up tight, right? And that is the beauty of a hard workout, because it tears down that wall and it allows you that moment to just give in and release. Yeah. So it just reminds me of martial arts. Like that's what that is for me. Like, I love working out and like lifting weights and stuff like that, but nothing has proved that to me more than martial arts training and competing. Yeah. It's like, from the proving that you're capable of something that you didn't think you could do before. Like, I have adults come in and try it for the first time ever, and like, they're scared, and it's nerve-wracking, and you feel silly because it's all these new movements that you've never done before with your body. But then you do it a little bit more and a little bit more, and you start to like put it together, and just seeing the confidence and the shift in people like that. Yeah. And then in myself, being able to kind of express my emotions through this, whether it's performing or fighting or whatever it is, it's a really powerful thing when your body and your mind can find that fusion, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think for me, the kettlebell was building, like, not when people think kettlebell, they often will just think a kettlebell swing, right? You got to swing. That's your main kind of kettlebell thing. But we build complexes. So like I'll talk language that's probably not going to be kind of be foreign to some people, but like we build, let's say, 4 movements together, but they flow together. And you have to think to do that, right? And people always think, I don't want to think, but you do. It's healthy to think, right? And it does a few things. Number one, it increases your neuromuscular efficiency, so your mind-body connection when you have to think of a pattern. Number 2, you have to think. So when you're thinking about a movement, you've removed yourself from your external world. So you've gifted yourself presence. So when you're training it, you're actually present in the movement. When you're present in the movement and you removed you from the external world, you've gifted yourself time, a break. That's why it's such a powerful reset. That would be like your martial arts too. When you do, like, I've done Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu where this movement goes into this movement, goes into this movement. Well, I can't think about my grocery list while I'm doing that, right?
Yeah.
You have to be present, and it gives your mind and your body a break from your stressors, right?
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have one more question for you.
Okay.
So this is a question that my previous guest wrote down. I haven't read it yet, so I'm going to give it to you, and then I'm going to let you write a question afterwards for my next guest. Are you up for that challenge?
Sure, let's do it.
All right, let's see. Okay. What is a quote or mantra that you have used to help guide or motivate you?
I would say, because it's in my book and I'm going to try not to get it wrong. Oh, I was going to give you a quote. Can I give you 2?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll allow it.
Okay, thank you. I'm always asking for a little bit more.
I love it.
First one is a Bruce Lee quote, and it is, I'm probably not going to get it right. It's going to
I might be able to help you with that. I'm a big Bruce Lee fan.
Okay, it's where you absorb. What is it? Do you know? Absorb what you need, release what you don't.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, it's not exactly what it is, but I love the idea of taking an experience, life experience, take what you need from it. Whatever you don't, let it go.
Love that.
Okay, so that was my one. And then the one that I always use, that I always talk about, is you are always part of your past, but your past does not have to define you. So it's part of you. You know, you have to have it to be here, but what goes on in it does not have to define who you are today.
Yeah, I love it.
Thank you for letting me do too.
Yeah, of course. Well, when you said Bruce Lee, I just had to.
Right? You're like, I should have known that better off the top of my head.
Yeah. Well, he's got so many good quotes,
right?
Bruce Lee. Yeah.
I love that. Was my favorite one, because it's just like, we all have experiences, right? And like when I do my certifications for kettlebell, it's like, take what you've learned here, but also create and make it uniquely your own.
Yeah.
Right?
I love that.
Yeah.
Is there anything that we haven't discussed today that you were hoping to discuss? I don't want to leave anything left unsaid.
I feel like we did really good. We covered quite a bit. It was good.
Yeah, this is a beautiful conversation. I appreciate you opening up and sharing, and I think everybody should go and get the book and read more about it so they can hear even more details about your beautiful journey. So
thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
And where can people get the book before we sign off?
Amazon.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
And we'll link it in the show notes in the description so people can grab it. But
awesome.
Once again, thank you for being here. This is really fun, and it's been fun to get to know you.
Thank you, Kyle. It was great.
Awesome. And thanks to everybody for listening and watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.